Hello everyone, Max here from Evidence-Based Football Manager. This is part 3 of my youth intake research series for FM23. In part 1 and part 2, I've been focusing on the youth announcement event, which takes place sometime in March or April every year in Football Manager. Today we shift our focus to the youth preview event, which takes place sometime in December for most clubs in Europe. I'll be presenting some experiments today where I try changing a range of variables just before the youth preview event and analysed how those changes affect the quality of your youth intake. The experiment setup for today is different from part 1 and part 2. In the last two videos, AZ Alkmaar of the Eredivisie was used as the main test subject of my experiments. This time, instead of using AZ Alkmaar, I've built a whole new custom league from scratch using the pregame editor. There are two main advantages of using a custom league for these youth intake experiments. One, it's easier for me as a tester to manipulate all the variables in the game and maintain a tightly controlled lab environment. And two, simulations can be done a lot faster because when I create these custom leagues, I delete a lot of unnecessary weight from the database that places extra demand on the CPU. Using AZ Alkmaar, it would take about 10 minutes to simulate the game from December to April, but using my custom league, it takes less than a minute to do the same thing. So it obviously makes it a lot easier for me to run repeated trials and build up a sample pool. Let me give you a quick tour of my very own youth intake league. Technically, it's a league that's based in Holland, but obviously it's a totally artificial league that's made completely from scratch. There are 8 teams in the league, team A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. I didn't create any senior players for any of these teams because it's just not relevant for the purpose of these youth intake experiments. I did create 3 staff members for each of these teams. The first staff member is obviously the manager, and this one manager is in charge of all 8 teams in the league. Each club also has one head of youth development and also a coach who is the manager of the U18 squad. I'll go through the experiment method now. Today's experiment involves changing a range of variables before the youth preview event and investigating how those changes affect the outcome of your youth intake. Out of the 8 teams in the youth intake league, Team E was used as the test subject. A range of variables were changed for Team E while no changes were made to any of the other teams. A save file was created on the 6th of December, which is one day before the youth preview event. For the control group, the variables were set at their middle values. For example, 10 out of 20 for youth recruitment, 100 out of 200 for youth rating of Holland, 5,000 out of 10,000 for a head of youth development reputation, and so on. The game was simulated from the 6th of December to the 20th of March, which is after the youth announcement events have taken place for all 8 clubs of the Youth Intake League. Each club gets 16 new gens per season, so that's 128 new gens across 8 clubs. At the end of each simulation, on the 20th of March, I exported the attributes of all the new gens into an Excel spreadsheet. Repeat trials were conducted 30 times every time I changed a variable. 14 different types of variables were tested, which I will display on the screen right now. Some quick notes about some of these variables that I tested. With scouting range. So this is a setting that you can find in the scouting page in the game, right here. I did a set of trials when Team E's scouting range was set as World, which is the best scouting range you can have in the game. And I also did another set of trials when Team E's scouting range was set as None, which is the worst scouting package that you can have. The aim here is to find out whether a club's scouting range settings can affect the quality of the club's youth intake. With the U18 manager and the head of youth development, when I say coaching attributes, I'm referring to the attributes that are listed on the left-hand side of the staff page right here. And when I say personality attributes, I'm referring to the 7 types of attributes in the game that count towards the personality of players and staff members in Football Manager, including ambition, loyalty, pressure, professionalism, sportsmanship, temperament, and also determination as well. With scouting knowledge, okay, this is what I did. All 8 heads of youth development in the Youth Intake League have, by default, extensive scouting knowledge of Holland. What I did first was to use the Football Manager real-time editor to delete the scouting knowledge of Team E's head of youth development, which means this one guy now has the worst scouting knowledge out of all the 8 heads of youth development in the league. A set of 30 trials was conducted with this setting. After that, I used the real-time editor again to delete the scouting knowledge of all other heads of youth development in the league except for the Team E head of youth, which means now Team E's head of youth has the best scouting knowledge out of all his colleagues. The aim here is to find out whether the scouting knowledge of a club's head of youth development affects the quality of the club's youth intake. I also did a set of trials when both the head of youth development and the U18 manager were fired from Team E, so that no one was in charge of Team E's youth intake duties. I've explained this in the last video, but if you go into the staff responsibilities page, you can assign the youth intake duties to one of your senior staff members. There's a rumor going around that if this youth intake duty is given to someone other than the head of youth development, it somehow guarantees top quality youth intake, which is what I was trying to test. So I did one set of trials when no one was in charge of the youth intake duties, and also another set of trials when only the head of youth was fired, and this youth intake duties was assigned to the U18 manager. Now, there was obviously a lot of data that was collected, so I had to be selective about how all this data was to be curated and presented in this video. And I've decided to break this presentation down to 3 parts. First, I will go through the average CA ratings and PA ratings of Team E's new gens under different scenarios, and then compare them with the control. Secondly, I will focus just on the top quality Wonder Kids from each sample pool and analyze how many of those top Wonder Kids were recruited by Team E as I changed all the variables. Third, I will focus on the personality attributes and find out which variables in the game influenced the personality attributes of Team E's new gens. Alright, let's take a look at the results. First of all, I have 2 graphs here. The one on the left shows you the relationship between the variables and the CA ratings of Team E's new gens. The graph on the right shows you the relationship between the variables and the PA ratings of new gens. Remember, in these tests, the variables were changed 1 day before the youth preview event in December. And the control scenario is represented by these black colored bars right here and here. So from this graph, I can spot 3 variables that affect the CA ratings of new gens: club reputation, youth facilities, and junior coaching. For example, in the control group, the average CA of Team E new gens was 39.6, but when club reputation of Team E was set as 1 out of 10,000, the average CA of new gens fell to 28.4, whereas when club reputation was set as 10,000, the average CA of new gens shot up to 51.5. Similar pattern was observed with youth facilities and also with junior coaching as well. Now, does this mean that these variables must be changed before the youth preview event for them to be effective? The answer is yes for youth facilities, but no for club reputation and junior coaching. This is where things get a little bit complicated. Remember in the part 2 video, I tried changing all these variables just before the youth announcement event with AZ Alkmaar, and I found that improving club reputation and junior coaching just before youth announcement was effective in boosting the CA ratings of the youth intake. It seems that with certain variables in the game like club reputation and junior coaching, the cutoff date, so to speak, is the youth announcement event, which happens in March or April depending on the club. And those variables will have an impact on the quality of the youth intake as long as they are changed just before the youth announcement. With youth facilities, however, it's a different story. In the last video, I found that improving the level of youth facilities just before youth announcement did not lead to a rise in the CA ratings of new gens. But improving youth facilities before youth preview, as we can see from today's results, did lead to a rise in the CA ratings of new gens. You put 2 and 2 together and a deduction can be made. Youth facilities is a variable that needs a bit of time for it to be effective. After you upgrade your club's youth facilities, you need to let a bit of time pass before any differences could be made to the quality of your youth intake. So with club reputation and junior coaching, as long as an improvement is made before the youth announcement, the CA ratings of your new gens will go up, whereas with youth facilities, any improvement must be made at least a few months prior to the youth announcement for it to have any impact on the quality of your youth intake. Let's now take a look at the PA ratings. From this graph, I can spot 4 variables that correlate with the PA ratings of new gens: youth recruitment, youth facilities, junior coaching, and also the youth rating of Holland. We need to do another round of deductive reasoning here. In the part 2 video, I found that youth facilities, junior coaching, and the youth rating of Holland correlated with the PA ratings of new gens when those variables were changed just before the youth announcement event. Therefore, the correlations that we see here today with youth facilities, junior coaching, and youth rating are not new discoveries. The cutoff date for these 3 variables is the youth announcement event, which is again sometime in March or April, depending on your club. And these variables will be effective in boosting the PA ratings of your new gens as long as an improvement is made before the youth announcement. But the same cannot be said with youth recruitment. In the part 2 video, it was found that changing youth recruitment just before the youth announcement event did not affect the PA ratings of new gens. It can be deduced, therefore, that the cutoff date for youth recruitment is before the youth preview event. Youth recruitment needs to be improved before youth preview for it to be effective in boosting the PA ratings of your new gens. Okay, let's move on to the second presentation that I wanted to make today, which is focusing just on the top 1% of the youth intake. This is how the data analysis was done. Whenever I change one of the variables in all these tests, the total sample size is 3,840 new gens. So what I did was to realign each sample pool in the order of CA ratings. Then I selected the top 40 Wonder Kids from that list. 40 out of 3,840 is not exactly 1%, it's more like 1.04%. But you know what I'm trying to do? I'm basically trying to isolate only the best of the best out of each sample pool. And I counted how many of those top 40 Wonder Kids were from Team E. Remember, Team E is the test subject, so it's the number of Team E new gens that need to be recorded and observed. I repeated the same process for the PA ratings as well, again using top 40 Wonder Kids from each sample pool in terms of their PA ratings. So let's go through the results. I have 2 graphs here that show you the number of Team E players out of the top 40 Wonder Kids as I change the variables of Team E. The graph on the left is when the top Wonder Kids were selected based on their CA ratings, and the graph on the right is when the top Wonder Kids were selected based on their PA ratings. Now in these 2 graphs, because I've limited the sample size to just 40 players, statistical sensitivity isn't great. Like if there are minor fluctuations in the height of these bars, it's kind of hard to say whether they are reflective of legitimate impacts made by the variables or if they're just, random fluctuations. So I won't go through every single one of these variables that show minor fluctuations. I will only point out the variables that where the effect is really beyond doubt. So if you take a look at this graph here, you can see that club reputation and junior coaching are the 2 most important factors when it comes to attracting Wonder Kids with the best CA ratings. Actually, what I'll do is I'll show you the raw data for these graphs, which can provide further clarification. Okay, here you can see when Team E's club reputation was maxed out at 10,000, 21 out of the top 40 Wonder Kids were recruited by Team E. Whereas when the level of junior coaching of Team E was maxed out, 20 out of the top 40 Wonder Kids were from Team E. And when it comes to recruiting Wonder Kids with the best PA ratings, youth recruitment and junior coaching are the two most important factors. Let's take a look at the raw data again. So when the level of youth recruitment of Team E was set as 20 out of 20, 16 out of the top 40 Wonder Kids were from Team E. And also, when the level of junior coaching of Team E was set as 20 out of 20, 19 out of the top 40 Wonder Kids were from Team E. So yeah, according to these findings, club reputation, junior coaching, and youth recruitment seem to be the three most important variables if you wanted to maximize your chances of recruiting the best Wonder Kids into your club. Having said that, there's still some degree of randomness involved, so even if you maximize all the variables and do all the necessary upgrades for your club, it's still not guaranteed that you will monopolize all the best Wonder Kids that are generated in the league. For example, if you take a look at the raw data again for junior coaching, when junior coaching was set as 20 out of 20 for Team E, a lot of top Wonder Kids did go to Team E, sure, but there were still some fish that escaped the net. This Wonder Kid, for example, he had the highest PA rating out of the entire sample pool, but he was recruited by Team B. And this kid here, with the third highest PA rating in the sample pool, went to Team G. So when you're playing Football Manager, you can do all the necessary upgrades and try to maximize your chances of getting the best Wonder Kids, but there's still an element of luck involved, so don't be too disappointed if a Wonder Kid is found in one of your rival clubs every now and then. Alright, moving on to the third presentation that I wanted to make today, which is focusing on the personality attributes of players. Now, while I was running all these trials, I have recorded all 7 attributes that contribute towards a player's personality in Football Manager, including determination, ambition, loyalty, pressure, professionalism, sportsmanship, and temperament. However, if I converted all that information into bar graphs, the graph would just look really enormous and it'll just be an information overload. So what I will do today is to just present to you 2 attributes, determination and professionalism. Those are the 2 personality attributes that are valued the most in Football Manager anyway, because the personalities that are highly sought after in the game, like model citizen or model professional, all require high levels of determination and professionalism. And also, after doing some background data analysis, I've discovered that all the hidden attributes that count towards a player's personality are affected by the same variables in the same manner. Variables that influence professionalism also influence ambition, loyalty, pressure, sportsmanship, and temperament in the same way. So I think it's sufficient for the purpose of conciseness to limit today's presentation to just determination and professionalism. So first of all, determination. Straightforward results. None of the variables that I tested affected the determination of new gens to any significant degree. Of course, there are some minor fluctuations here and there between all these bars, but as you can see, they're all within a small range between 9 and 9.9. So the conclusion I make at this point is that no variable in Football Manager can influence the determination attribute of your youth intake. Next, let's take a look at professionalism. I can only spot one variable that's had an impact on the player's professionalism, which is the professionalism of the head of youth development. In the control, the average professionalism of Team E New Gens was 11.7, and when Team E's head of youth had 1 out of 20 professionalism, the average professionalism of Team E's New Gens fell to 10.7. Whereas, when the head of youth had 20 out of 20 professionalism, the average professionalism of Team E New Gens rose to 12.5. So there's definitely a correlation going on here. Remember, I'm only showing you professionalism in this graph, but all the other hidden personality attributes behave in the same way. Ambition, loyalty, pressure, sportsmanship, and temperament of the head of youth development all have a correlative relationship with the corresponding attribute of your new gens. This is a finding that's consistent with what I talked about in the past two videos. In part 1 and part 2, I found that the personality of new gens is affected by the personality of your head of youth development, which is a finding that's reaffirmed by the results that you see right here. Some of you have asked me whether the personality of the youth team coaches can affect the personality of your new gens, and my answer is no, according to today's results. When the U18 manager of Team E had 1 out of 20 professionalism, the average professionalism of Team E's new gens was 11.5, and when the U18 manager had 20 out of 20 professionalism, the average professionalism of the new gens was also exactly 11.5. So yeah, I'm not seeing any correlation here between the personality of the U18 manager and the personality of the new gens. Alright, finally, I wanted to quickly discuss the experiment that I did regarding the youth intake staff responsibilities. Remember, I ran a set of trials when the youth intake duties were delegated to the U18 manager, and another set of trials when no one was in charge of the youth intake duties. Put simply, none of those experiments resulted in the generation of top quality youth intakes. In both scenarios, the average CA ratings of new gens were similar to the control, the average PA ratings of new gens were similar to the control, the number of top quality new gens found in Team E was similar to the control, and lastly, the personality attributes of Team E new gens was also similar to the control. So yeah, delegating youth intake duties to someone other than the head of youth development did not lead to any observable differences in the quality of the youth intake. This doesn't mean that you should fire your head of youth development though. As I showed you earlier, the personality of your new gens will be affected by the personality of your head of youth, and you do want to maximize the likelihood that your new gens will have a good personality. So I do encourage you to hire a head of youth development with a desirable personality, such as professional or model citizen, and keep him in charge of your club's youth intake duties. Okay, time to do a summary of today's findings. 1. The following variables correlated with the CA and PA ratings of the youth intake when they were changed before the youth preview event in December: youth recruitment, club reputation, youth facilities, junior coaching, and national youth rating. Do take note that most of these variables will be effective even when you change them just before the youth announcement event. Only 2 of these variables must be changed earlier in the season for them to be effective. Those 2 variables are 1. Youth facilities, which correlates with the CA ratings of new gens only if it's changed at least a few months before the youth announcement event. And 2. Youth recruitment, which correlates with the PA ratings of new gens only if it's changed prior to the youth preview event. 2. The following variables will help but not guarantee your chances of recruiting the top quality wonder kids in the game: club reputation and junior coaching if you wanted to recruit wonder kids with top CA ratings; youth recruitment and junior coaching if you wanted to recruit wonder kids with top PA ratings. Do remember that there's always an element of luck involved, so even when you maximize all these variables, some wonder kids may still be recruited by other clubs in the league. 3. None of the variables that I tested influenced the determination attribute of new gens. Hidden attributes that count towards personality, including ambition, loyalty, pressure, professionalism, sportsmanship, and temperament, are all influenced by the corresponding attribute of your head of youth development. 4. Assigning the youth intake duties to the U18 manager, or not assigning it to anyone, did not lead to any differences in the quality of the youth intake compared to the control. I still recommend having a head of youth development, preferably someone with a desirable personality, so that it can benefit the personality of your new gens. Alright lads, that's it for today. I will probably do 1 or 2 more videos on the youth intake game mechanics in Football Manager, so if you guys have any suggestions or things you wanted me to test, let me know in the comment section below and I will take a look at them. Okay guys, take care and I'll see you all next time.